Who's that? Commander Claw. Who's bad? Commander Claw. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Brews, where I try to change your opinion about the commander, or I expand on the original idea that you have for this commander. And today's commander is Koma Cosmos Serpent. First I'm going to read the card, then I want to talk about his strengths and weaknesses. And as I go through this, listen to what I'm trying to say, and maybe it will spark an idea of cards to find as you research them on EDH or Scryfall. Okay, so let's get right into it. First, we have Koma. It is a simic commander for 3 colors, 2 green, 2 blue. It's a 6/6 legendary serpent. And I'm going to zoom in, and guess what? This spell cannot be countered. Then it says, at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Koma's Coil. Sacrifice another serpent. Choose one. First option, tap target permanent. Its activated abilities can't be activated this turn. Second ability, Koma's Cosmos Serpent gains indestructible until end of turn. So if you are new to Magic and you've seen this commander in the bulk bin, it is actually a very powerful commander. It is known for tapping down permanents of your opponents, and it is a control creature. Okay, and it's very difficult for your opponents to get rid of. The only way they can get rid of it is really through exile. Okay, exile is the only way besides giving it -X, -X. Uh, so yeah, that is Koma. What you really most decks actually like tap into is the ability of creating a 3/3 blue serpent creature token each upkeep. So one revolution of everybody playing, you're gonna get 3 and 4 Coma's coils by the time your turn starts. Okay. And I think most players that are new to this need to understand the basic phases of Magic. And they are untap, upkeep, draw, main phase, combat, post combat main phase, discard phase. Well, actually, end step, discard phase, which is your cleanup step. Okay, so we want to be triggering Coma on each player's turn at the beginning of each upkeep. So remember, untap, upkeep. This triggers. Enough about Coma's strengths. Weaknesses, there's really isn't anything besides its heavy CMC costs. But once it hits the battlefield, it is staying. So as you build your deck, you need to make sure that you give it some protection spells, which is very easy to do with blue and green. The other part of the deck will be mana ramping. And of course, you're going to have the different lands to be able to, or, fetch lands, which are very expensive, but ramp cards that get you more lands to put into play. They're going to be heavily involved in this deck because your opponents are going to try to eliminate them. So look to cast them twice. Moving on to cards that can probably are known to work with it are Adrex and Nev Twin Casters. It is a Merfolk wizard for 2 colors, blue and a green, and it's a 2/2 that has Ward 2. And it says if one or more tokens will be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. This is an easy, no-brainer value creature alongside Coma. So every time you make 1 Coma's coil on each upkeep, you're going to make 2 instead. So, yes, you're going to make 2 instead. I think I forgot to actually mention you have to sacrifice a coil, which is a serpent, to activate those bottom abilities, either giving it indestructible or tapping down a permanent. Just to Yeah, let me move on to the next card. Next card that you probably should add to the deck. Eldrazi Monument is a artifact for 5 mana that easily says creatures you control get +1/+1 and have flying and indestructible. At the beginning of your upkeep, sack a creature. If you can't, sacrifice Eldrazi Monument. This should stay on the battlefield unless a player hater use a destroy artifact spell on this card. Otherwise, your Coma Coil's Serpent are 4/4 flying indestructible tokens. That is very tough to deal with. This is a card with a really good rate. I always add it in my go wide decks, especially with tokens. Just giving them flying and indestructible. That means you can block flyers. That's important. Moving on, we have card Perplexing Test. Perplexing Test is a instant for 3 colors, 2 blue. Literally, it says choose one. Return all creature tokens to their owner's hands, or return all non-token creatures to their owner's hands. You will have the advantage here if you choose number 2. Return all token creatures, non-token creatures to their owner's hand. That means if you have Koma on the battlefield, Koma stays. Your tokens are gone. Actually, yeah, your tokens are gone, but maybe other players' tokens are gone too because, um, yeah, players are running wild with value engines out there creating creature tokens that are sack fodder. And the best way to get rid of them is to get rid of them without using a board wipe. Essentially, this is a board wipe. But you see what I'm saying? This card is versatile. It just gives you options. Either you're taking all creature tokens away or non-token creatures. You choose. You have the option and flexibility. Yes, I should have had this here, but I'm going to let you look at it for a second. I'm going to read the flavor text. Your proofs were a bit non-traditional, but effective nonetheless, full marks. Moving on to my favorite segment, politics as usual. If you've been watching the Breaking Brews video series, you know this is about. This is inspired from Jay-Z's song "Politics as Usual" off the Reasonable Doubt album. I'm always trying to encourage players to add political aspects to their EDH deck building because you can win the game by making a political choice or making friends and enemies in the game. Let's move on. First card we have here is Academy Lore Master. Academy Lore Master is a double blue human wizard that is a 2/3. Then she reads at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player may draw an additional card. If they do, spells they cast this turn cost 2 more to cast. Okay, you're probably like, why would I want a player to draw an extra card? You really don't. However, if you're running Simic and you most likely you have counterspells in your deck, you want to draw out the removal and you want to draw out the removal spells that your opponents have. And guess what? They're going to target Koma if it's on the battlefield, straight up. So the faster they get that card, the quicker they're going to use it. And guess what? You have mana available to counter it. Guess what? You are in Simic and you should have ramped a lot. Your commander requires you to ramp and have a lot of lands in play. It costs 7. If you're not going to be able to play the commander if you don't have 7 mana. That is a lot. That is a lot. Trust me, players. That is a lot and it's a commitment. However, the good thing about Koma, she is a very powerful commander that can stay on the board and has this built-in protection. But anyway, back to Academy Lore Master. It also taxes your opponents if they decide to draw an extra card that turn. So you're probably thinking maybe they have a board wipe. Well, if their damnation, which costs 4 in general, now it will cost 6. It will cost 6 to play. That is a lot. Taxing effects are taxing. And hey, if they're paying 2 more extra to cast a spell, that shows how committed they are. And if you hit them with a counter spell, it's even more devastating. So this political card is kind of a bait, baiting out players to play these cards, get the cards so their deck runs thin and they won't be able to win. And also, it gives you information. If your player decides to draw a card, that's saying they're willing to be taxed or they won't be playing anything that turn or they have nothing. And that means your serpent that you created on that turn actually can be sacrificed and tap down a permanent that they're trying to play. So in a way, you're taxing them and you could prevent so much, so many things with Coma. It's very devastating. Moving on to win cons. If you have a win con for Koma the Great Serpent, go ahead and comment below. We know that Simic is not really known for win cons that just destroy you without locking players out, or Thasus Oracle, or Laboratory Maniac, that stuff. But anyways, moving on. Here's my suggested win con. We have Trigon Prime. The reason why I have Trigon Prime as a win con, because maybe you want to be able to swing in with commander damage with Koma, the Cosmos Serpent. It is already a 6/6. So let me read the card for you and let you know how much better it gets with Trigon Prime. Trigon Prime is a 4/4 Tyrannid, okay? It has the Subterranean Assault ability. Whenever Trigon Prime attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it and a +1/+1 counter on up to one other target attacking creature. That creature cannot be blocked this turn. So, let's say you have an opponent. Look, straight up. If you swing with Trigon and Koma becomes a 7/7. Okay, that means it takes 3 hits to knock out an opponent, because at 21 combat damage, lethal. But don't even worry about that. Another thing, you're probably like, do you have to attack the same player? No, you don't. You can attack Tyrannid at another player and Koma at another player. And a Koma, if you target it, will still be unblockable and get a +1/+1 counter. Yes, that's the way you probably should do it if you don't want to lose, Tyrannid or the Trigon Prime. 3 cards to audition in your Koma the Great Cosmos Serpent deck. Let's comment below if you have any more suggested cards from 2024. First up, we have the Avabruck Caretaker. It is a very expensive spell. It's at 6 mana, but it's actually one of my favorites. Let's go ahead and read it. For 6 mana, it's a 4/4 human werewolf. She has hexproof. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control. Next, she has Daybound. If a player casts no spells during their own turn, it becomes night next turn. So the Daybound and Nightbound mechanic relies on players casting spells. So to go from day to night, they have to cast 0 spells. To go from night to day, they have to cast at least 2. Remember that. Okay. So next, she transforms. When she transforms into the Hollow Hinge Huntmaster. It is a 6/6 werewolf that has hexproof. It also says other permanents you control have hexproof. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. It also has Nightbound. If a player casts at least 2 spells during their own turn, it becomes day next turn. So when it goes from day to night and night to day, that means you transform the creature. Okay. So this card is great. It gives your permanents hexproof. That means your Ristic Study can't be blasted by a removal spell. Your commander can't even be targeted. Your lands can't even be targeted, especially those non-basic lands. Oh man, yeah, you're good. This is a really good card if you're able to transform it. And at the same time, you get to buff each of your creatures. That means each serpent is going to get 2 +1/+1 counters along with Koma. So you're creating 5/5s. Yeah, easy as that. It's just a powerful creature. Moving on. Moving on to Oger Pakpatik, Deepest Epoch. I love saying that. Oger Pakpatik, Deepest Epoch. 2 colors, 2 blue. You get a 4/3 God creature. God creature. This is from one of my favorite sets, Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Let me tell you what this card does. It has flying. It's a 4/3 flyer. Whenever you cast an instant from your hand, it gains rebound. Rebound says exile as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast it from exile without paying its mana cost. Then Oger Patik dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control with 3-time counters on it. If you never use the rebound mechanic, literally you get to play a spell that turn, then the next turn you get to cast that same spell for free. So it's literally almost like a copy spell, but on the next turn. Rebound is really good to just get that extra effect one more time. So your draw spells go from draw 2 cards to essentially drawing 4 cards. Yes, yes. I want you to start thinking about that. Those are layering effects. Okay. Adding more effects on top of effects on another turn. It's almost cascading effects. That's why I really like Oja Tak Tak. And blending it with blue and green makes it even more powerful. Like your ramp spells. If you have this out and a ramp spell like Harrow, because it's an instant, not only would you get 2 on that turn, your following turn you get another 2. And guess what? You don't have to sacrifice another land because that's the additional casting cost. This says rebound. It says you play it without paying its mana cost. So bam, you literally have sacked 1 land to get 4 lands plus 3. That's a net 3. Really good value with a hero and this creature, this god creature, Ultra Patik, Deepest Epoch. Moving on, when it turns into a land, it pretty much is really just hard to get rid of. Uh, tap it, add a blue mana. You get an extra land when it dies. Okay, tap it, add a blue mana, remove a time counter, or yeah, straight up. It's just a really good card. The creature doesn't die. It has to be exiled. Um, and you tap these when it has no counters on it. Tap a total 3 mana to transform it back into Deepest Ojapak Patik. Moving on. Next card we have is Krufix, God of Horizons. This card can be a little tricky for new players. So I'm going to read it first and then just explain a little bit more. Okay, for 3 colors, simic colors, blue-green, it's a legendary enchantment creature god. It's indestructible. It is a 4/7. It says, as long as your devotion to green and blue is less than 7, Krufix isn't a creature. Also, you have no maximum hand size. Also, if unused mana will empty from your mana pool, that mana becomes colorless instead. Okay, so let's talk about the bottom ability. If unused mana will empty from your mana pool, that mana becomes colorless instead. So the scenario is you have 7 mana open. You passed your turn, right? You give that man on the other player's turn, you can tap mana and tap that 7 mana and it goes into a pool. Well, no matter what the color is, blue, green, it turns colorless. And colorless mana gets stored additionally on the side. So what makes this card devastating is the unused mana can be saved mana later on. Okay? So back to our example. You had 7 mana, you passed your turn. Next turn, on a player's turn, you tap 7. So by the time your turn comes back around again, you have additional 7 mana on this turn. Okay. So that means you got really 14 mana on this next turn. Now, 7 of it is colors, and the other 7 is whatever the combination of colors that it is. A good way to keep count of the excess mana you have is to use one of the D20 die. This card is really good to ramp and to cast your commander a second, third, or fourth time because you're going to need the additional mana. And also, simic, you're going to ramp a lot. So why not use the mana in a way to store it and save it for later turns? This card does that for you. Also, it is very difficult to remove. It is indestructible. It's also an enchantment creature. So not only is it indestructible, when it isn't a creature, it's an enchantment. So only a exile enchantment can get rid of it. Only an exile enchantment can get rid of this card. Straight up. When it's a creature, you can give it -7, -7. Moving on. Thank you for watching another Breaking Brews with Commander Claw. I should have said that in the beginning. I am Commander Claw. But yeah, this episode is about Koma Cosmos Serpent. Is one of my favorite commanders because it's just a boss to deal with. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and add any comment that you feel is necessary to this video. Peace out. Continue watching more videos. Breaking Brews, Commander Claw. Peace.